What is up, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Dynasty Pros IDP Show, brought to you by dynastyprosfootball.com and idpguys.org, both of your homes for all things IDP. Be sure to go check out both websites for your latest IDP rankings, articles, and all kinds of IDP content. And don't forget to check us out here on YouTube and hit that little subscribe button. It helps us out a bunch. Does do us a favor there. All right. So Tommy, man, there is a lot of news going on today. A lot of guys missing, a lot of guys are questionable. So before we get into some of our IDP ads and starts and our studs and our duds, let's go over some of the latest NFL news, get everyone caught up with who they need to be looking out for, guys they need to be taken out of their lineups, guys that they can probably safely plug in. So let's get started. Let's start, on our list here. Isaiah McKenzie is still in concussion protocol for Buffalo. He was a very, very hot IDP or a very, very hot waiver wire ad this week. Jamison Crowder and Dawson Knox have both been ruled out of this game. So McKenzie was a nice little name, sneaky little PPR play to keep an eye out for. So if he can play, I think he'd be a nice little start for those guys that are in need of wide receiver help. Your Michael Thomas owners, your Keenan Allen owners, your Rashad Bateman owners, things like that. So, that's something to really monitor right now. Tommy, your favorite player, Kyle Pitts, what about him today?
He's out. He was ruled out due to a hamstring injury, so he won't be playing on Sunday. Kind of glad I jumped off that burning ship.
Yeah, looks like you shipped him off at the right time. I know you're itching to get 2 or 3 fantasy points a week, but you're just not going to be able to get it out of him this week.
Yeah, won't happen this week. So.
Yep. And Cameron Brate, also in that game, Cameron Brate has been ruled out as well. So a lot of these tight ends, some guys, Cameron Brate has been somewhat playable. He's putting up almost double-digit fantasy points per game in PPR leagues. And if you're in a tight end premium, his value just goes up there. So definitely make your substitutions with him being ruled out as well. Mentioned Rashad Bateman earlier, foot injury. He's been in a walking boot throughout the week. He's been ruled out for the game Sunday night against the Cincinnati Bengals. So get him out of your lineups immediately. Put in a good little claim right there. I would try and grab Devin Duvernay if he's on the waiver wire. So that's someone to really, really go and snatch up to. Tommy, Michael Thomas, and Keenan Allen are missing this week again, which absolutely kills me, my man. I'm a big Keenan Allen guy, and I'm a huge Michael Thomas guy as well. And I owned a lot of Rashad Bateman. So these 3 guys are killing me. I own them in the Scott Fish Bowl. I own them in all over the place, man. I am going absolutely bonkers over that. However,
another one out this week is Brevin Jordan. You were talking about tight end a minute ago. Brevin Jordan's out this week. So maybe a decent flyer this week, maybe OJ Howard.
Could be. And Brevin Jordan wasn't getting a lot of love, but he was playing some snaps. And so, like you said, OJ Howard, may play. Obviously, it's going to play a lot more. So that's something to keep an eye out for. Hunter Renfrow was a full participant in today's practice. So things are looking up. Looks like he's going to play. He's going to suit up Sunday. And that should be a kind of a high-scoring game. So I think Hunter Renfrow, if you're a Hunter Renfrow owner, get him out there. Unless you have better options, go ahead and roll him out there. At least flex him if you need to. I know I own a lot of Hunter Renfrow. So with this Keenan Allen, Michael Thomas, Rashad Bateman news, I'm very, very happy that at least I can plug in Hunter Renfrow in a lot of those lineups. So,
he is like 43 years old. So,
Hunter?
Yeah, it's kind of right up your alley. He looks like it, anyways.
Well, yeah, he may look it, but he's not a 40-year-old guy.
Oh, I know. He's not actually 40 years old. I'm just saying
he's a young chap. He's a young lad. So, Jahad Dotson, Treylon Burks, both ruled out this Sunday. So, keep an eye out for that. You got to get those guys out of your lineup. Tommy, what else is going on out there?
Looks like Bailey Zappe's going to start on Sunday.
Boy.
Yep. Mac Jones is doubtful to play, so Zappe is in line to start. Andy Dalton is going to start for New Orleans over Jameis Winston.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, I think Jameis has been ruled out, I believe, hasn't he?
I didn't see where he was officially ruled out, but that would actually make sense.
Yeah.
Other than the fact that they're both terrible, but whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
Eric Armstead and Javon Kinlaw are out this week for the Niners. Adjust your defensive line accordingly if you have either one of those two.
Mm-hmm.
Randy Gregory's going to be out 2 to 6 weeks after arthroscopic knee surgery.
All right.
So, if you have him, you won't be able to use him for a while. Lewis Seen for the Vikings placed on IR after breaking his leg over the weekend.
Ugh.
That was a nasty looking break too. It was nasty.
Yeah.
Then, like you said, Jordan Poyer is out this week again, so he won't be playing. That's kind of a hit for your safety position because if you had Jordan Poyer, you're most likely playing him.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. He's always been a pretty solid start, so that's going to hurt some lineups there. Frankie Louvu is back at practice today after he sat out yesterday. He's got a little shoulder thing going on, but everything looks good for him to play
but
Sunday.
He looks like he's playing, so fire him up. He's becoming a must start for you.
Oh, absolutely, he has.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is a waiver wire like darling here. I mean, anybody that picked him up, I mean, he is an every week starter. I've been very, very fortunate of grabbing him. So got playing him in a lot of leagues. I'm rolling him out there every single week. So just read that, Jadeveon Clowney, not 100% sure on it yet, but looks like there is a possibility he could play this week. I'm not going to hold my breath, but he's got in a couple limited sessions, and today being one of those days. So I don't know. I mean, I'm scared of him because I know we've been Clowney owners have been kind of itching to play him because he's missed the last few weeks. And I'm just terrified that if you do actually plug him in and he plays, what happens if he kind of aggravates his ankle or something and he has to come out, That's something that really, really concerns me. So that's something to monitor there. If you're a Clowney owner, it's going to be a risky play if he does suit up this week. So,
well, that burned you this past week too, didn't it?
It really, really did. Yeah, I actually lost a fantasy matchup against a guy who was one of the top dogs in the league. I think he and I probably have the two best teams in a dynasty league, and I thought I had changed my lineup, but I still had Clowney in there and got a big fat 0 from him, and ended up losing by, I don't know, I think I ended up losing that matchup by like 7 fantasy points or something, like 7 points. So if I'd have plugged someone else in there, I might have pulled it out, but I'll see him again in the playoffs, I'm sure. Anyways, just let anyone out there that's watching the show, if you have any questions at all, go check us out over on YouTube and submit your questions, and we'll answer them live on the air if we have time. So, just a thought there. All right, Tommy. So let's get to some of our IDP studs as of late. We're going to kind of go over some of the fantasy points with these guys, but I think you kind of want to talk a little bit about J.J. Watt. And
yeah, he's a little bit of a special one this week.
Yeah.
I don't know if everyone's heard or not, but he had a little bit of a heart issue last week. And went into AFib, and then on Wednesday, and then on Thursday had his heart shocked back into rhythm, and then played on Sunday. That right there is a just inhuman, just absolute stud.
Agreed. So what else? What else is going on? Who else was a stud?
Well, Danico Autry came back after pretty disappointing last week or two, and racked up 2 tackles, both of them solo, 2 sacks, and another tackle for a loss. So 15 points this week. Pretty solid from a defensive lineman.
Not too shabby. Dexter Lawrence of the Giants had a 14.5 point fantasy day. He had 5 tackles, including 2 solos, 2 sacks, and a tackle for loss. That's a good game for him.
Yep.
Still not sure if he's a guy that I'm starting weekly, though. He's just someone to kind of keep an eye out for, but he did have a good game. Just take note. Let's just put it that way.
Defensive tackles, depending on the league, are kind of difficult to play like that. But
Yeah, he could be useful if there are some leagues that actually require you to play a defensive end and a defensive tackle. So.
right.
What else you got? What about our boy Hassan Reddick?
Hassan Reddick signing 4 tackles, 4 solo, 2 sacks, a tackle for a loss, and 2 fumble recoveries, 25 points. So that was a very, very good week if you happen to start him, which if you have him, a lot of people would have started him. So
yeah, flashback to last year.
Yeah, absolutely. And in some leagues, he may actually have defensive line eligibility. I know he's listed as a linebacker in a lot of leagues, but he may actually have defensive end eligibility in some. And if he does for you, then he really killed it.
Mm-hmm. My boy Adafe Owe out of Baltimore had a really, really good game. Had his first pretty good game of the season. He had 7 tackles, including 6 solo. He came away with a sack, and he forced a fumble, I believe, in this game, and had a tackle for loss. The fumble, I believe, it was recovered by the Ravens. So he caused a fumble in that one. So, he had a 15.5-point fantasy day, which I would take gladly each week. I mean, if this guy gets me 10 to 11 points, I'll be happy as can be. So very, 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 very happy to see him kind of get things going. And I hope if it keeps up, because it's been a little bit of a disappointment. You know, he and Patrick Queen this year for the Ravens have, they've expected a lot more out of these guys, and they just haven't come through just yet. I'm hoping things are looking up for him. So.
Well, he had a good fantasy day. I mean, I know in real life he may have cost the Ravens an opportunity to come back and tie that game, but you know, heat of the moment, you're gonna make that tackle all day, every day. So
yeah, you got to make that tackle. That's a different story. I don't want to relive that. The Ravens are 2-2 this season. Okay, they have trailed a total of 14 seconds.
That's an incredible stat.
14 seconds they've trailed this year, and they're 2-2. I mean, just
it's kind of ridiculous.
It's mind-blowing. Absolutely. Let's see here. Jonathan Allen, Washington Commanders, had a damn good game. 8 tackles, including 5 solo. He had a sack, 4 tackles for loss, and a pass defended. 23.5 fantasy points. Very good stuff. He was a guy that I kind of said over in my waiver wire article, a guy that I recommended, going out there and snatching him up. Heck of a day for him. Heck of a day. Through the first 4 weeks of this season, he's averaging 11.5 fantasy points per game.
I wonder how much of that's going to change whenever Chase Young comes back.
Not sure. Maybe they're going to have to show a little bit more attention to Chase Young, and it just makes things. I couldn't say it would hurt. It's not going to hurt Jonathan Allen. I think he's been
a lot of the time right now. He's also lining up a little bit outside, which most of the time he lines up on the inside. He has a little bit of that flexibility, kind of like an Aaron Donald. But whenever Chase Young comes back, I kind of wonder if he's going to line up outside as much.
Well, listen, the old saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So if they can continue getting that production out of him, they'll figure something out, and they'll make sure they can get him in that line, on the line, and in an area that he can get to the quarterback, because he is absolutely doing it. He's wreaking havoc. He is turning out to be an absolute stud. So he was someone on the waiver wire. I said, go grab him up this week. If he's available in your league, he is worth an ad. All right, what else do we have here? Brian Burns, it's kind of like a hit or miss. It's a roller coaster ride with him, man. 1 week he kind of another week he blows up. The next week it's one of those guys. He's going to blow up on your bench, it seems. And the week you get tired of him, you don't want to play him, you kind of bench him, then he blows up. But 7 tackles, 4 of them solo. He had a sack, and he had 3 tackles for loss. We've been talking about him almost every week. We bring his name up, it seems. I've talked about him several times over at dynastyprosfootball.com in my weekly waiver wire, IDP waiver wire article. I've brought him up multiple times. He can be a little bit frustrating every time.
I'm in a league where we play 3 defensive flexes, so I'm always starting him in that league. So I'm kind of living with the ups and downs there too. But I definitely loved him this past weekend.
Oh, I bet you did. Who else stood out to you, Tommy?
Rashawn Gary.
Yep. Yep.
Again, another one of those guys that is listed as a linebacker, but in some leagues he may have defensive line eligibility. 7 tackles, 4 solo, 2 sacks, and a tackle for a loss. 21.5 points.
He also had a forced fumble and recovered the fumble.
Yep.
21.5 fantasy points. And he's in my article. He was my number 1 defensive lineman grab this week. Well, not really number 1. He and Jonathan Allen both were right there, right at the top. Gary has 5 sacks through the first 4 games.
Yeah, he's been solid.
He needs to be owned in most leagues.
Mm-hmm.
He needs to be owned. He is playing very good football. So, all right, let's move on. Who else? Max Crosby. Max Crosby. What's going on with him, Tom?
It's an every week thing with him now, man.
4
tackles, 4 solo, 2 sacks, and 4 tackles for loss. I mean, the guy lives in the backfield.
I am sorry, just got a trade offer in a fantasy league here. It was kind of funny. I'm looking up his stats because if I'm not mistaken, my man, I think that he is the number 1 scoring defensive end. I think he's the number 1 scoring defensive lineman right now in fantasy football.
It wouldn't surprise me one bit. He does it every week, and he lives in the opponent's backfield, and that's what you want out of a defensive end.
Just had a guy in a dynasty league offer me James Conner and Rashad Bateman for Jamal Williams and Michael Pittman. It's an interesting deal.
That is kind of interesting.
Not too bad at all.
It may be worth a look.
Yeah, we'll take a gander at it a little bit later. But yeah, I really do think that Max Crosby's a number 1 scoring defensive lineman right now in fantasy. At least according to our scoring, which if you ever kind of wonder how you come up with these points, go check out dynastyprosfootball.com. Look at any of our IDP articles, IDP rankings, all of that. We have an explanation. We have a chart with our scoring system, which hundreds of leagues are using right now. And you can kind of see why we score everything the way that we do. So let's see here. Who else stood out to you, Tommy?
Let's move on to the linebacker side.
Good.
Rashawn Evans.
By the way, Crosby is the number 1 scoring defensive end right now.
Makes sense. It makes sense. Where was I?
Linebacker.
Rashawn Evans, for Atlanta. Not really a guy you're thinking of right now. Hasn't really been super productive over the last couple seasons, but 10 tackles, 5 solo, and a fumble recovery. Good for 10.5 points. Just monitor that. That's probably not going to be an every week thing, but you never know.
Yeah,
especially on a bad defense like that.
Yeah, and I wrote about him. He was one of my linebacker suggestions, one of my linebacker ads in the IDP waiver wire article. He had 12 tackles in week 3 as well.
Mm-hmm.
So now he's got double-digit tackles in back-to-back games, especially against those run-heavy teams. He is an absolute IDP must-start. He's averaging right now 9.38 fantasy points per game. So pretty useful at linebacker. I'm not saying he's an every week start. It's a matchup based start. If it's a run heavy team, certainly get him in your lineup, but he could be worth an add, especially when these bye weeks start happening here. So someone to really keep on your radar there. Malcolm Rodriguez, my boy, I'm loving him more and more every week. He was my number 1 linebacker add this week. I kind of talked about him early in the season and said by mid-season he could be kind of a 10-point-a-week linebacker. Well, that's kind of happened sooner now than later. He had 11 tackles, 8 of them solo, and a forced fumble on Sunday. He is starting to – it was inevitable. He's making a name for himself, and he's getting literally better every stinking week. And he is a must add, especially if you're in an IDP league that's a dynasty league. Snatch him up right now. I think he is, he could be like, going back a few years, he could be kind of like your new Luke Kuechly type of player.
Sure. Blake Martinez, Luke Kuechly, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's that type of guy, and he's going to be a tackle monster and going to be worth. You are going to be happy that you picked him up now if you're able to get your hands on him. So, who's someone else that stood out to you, man?
Zaire Franklin for the Colts has been having a pretty solid season overall. Last weekend, I'm not going.
Not talking about last night, but last week.
Yeah, not last night, but last weekend. 15 tackles, 8 solo, 11.5 points. That's pretty good. He seems to have been doing. He's been doing that over the last several weeks, actually. So it doesn't seem as if it's fluky at all.
Is he putting these points up because of Shaq Leonard missing, or I mean, if when Shaquille Leonard finally gets back on the field, whenever that happens, are you kind of? I mean, do you think that's going to affect Franklin's numbers?
Maybe a little bit, just because Leonard is such a just tackle machine, but I think it'll mainly affect somebody like EJ Speed more than what it will Franklin.
Gotcha.
But then you got for the Giants, Tay Crowder.
11
tackles, 7 solo, a sack, and a tackle for a loss. 18 points. That's a pretty studly week.
Yeah.
And then you got last year's tackle leader, Foyesade Oluokun, moved from Atlanta down to Jacksonville and tore it up this past weekend. There we go, stupid ESPN app. He had 16 tackles, 12 solo, and 3 tackles for a loss. So
23 fantasy points, man. I picked him up, obviously I grabbed him a couple of leagues, and I remember you telling me you didn't think he was going to do squat for Jacksonville, and look at him.
I don't remember saying that, but
I don't know. I think he gave me a little crap when I won him in an auction league that you and I did. I think I paid $11 for him, and I think I caught a little bit of crap from you. I could be wrong.
You may have. I
don't. Anyways, our boy Matt Milano out of Buffalo had an 18-point fantasy game, 13 tackles, 11 of them solo, and he had a couple of passes defended.
Yep.
Great game for him. My guy, my boy, Frankie Louvu, 23.5 fantasy points, man, 11 tackles, 6 solo, a tackle for loss, pass defended, and he had a pick 6 as well. Oh, had him in so many lineups, and boy, I just loved it. Loved it.
He's 100% a must start.
Yep. Josie Jewell is continuing to do his work. Last night, he was rocking to start things off. He kind of got hurt and was kind of in and out of that game, if I'm not mistaken. So didn't have the greatest performance last night as far as fantasy numbers, but he is an absolute must start when he's playing. Last night, like I said, he was in and out. So Dre Greenlaw, 15 tackles, 12 of them solo, and a tackle for loss. 15 tackles, man. 16.5 fantasy points, just racking them up, especially against those run-heavy teams. So, man, that's what we've been waiting for a while with him.
And in that defense, you would expect it to be Fred Warner, but it was Greenlaw last weekend, and sometimes you just never know what linebacker is gonna show up. And
it's kind of weird. It's like Kansas City wide receivers or New England running backs or something. Is like how San Francisco's linebacker core is. You don't know which one's gonna ball out from week to week.
That's right.
Let's move on to DBs. Let's talk about some defensive backs. I'm gonna let you start with this. Tyrann Mathieu, man. Tyrann Mathieu, I'm not a fan of his, so whatever. He had a good fantasy game, had 11.5 fantasy points. He had 7 tackles, 4 solo, and he had a pick, and he had a pass defended.
I've just always loved the Honey Badger, man.
I know. I've just never been a fan of him, of his fantasy numbers. I think he's a bigger name than he is an actual IDP, player. So, my boy Deshaun Elliott used to be an ex-Raven, now up in Detroit, had a nice game, had 11 tackles, 9 of them solo, having a quiet, nice, fantasy production up there. So I talked about him in the waiver wire article. He's not a must grab, but just keep him on the radar.
He's getting there.
Yep. Keep him on the radar. I mean, obviously with Tracy Walker missing, someone's got to fill those shoes, and Deshaun Elliott is more than capable of doing it. However, he has had injury issues himself, where I think 3 out of the 4 seasons he played in Baltimore, he like left with a season-ending injury. So
here's the thing though. With the Lions defense being as bad as it is, that secondary gets a ton of work.
They do. You're absolutely right. So he's someone, like I said, keep him on that radar because he could be useful, especially with these bye weeks coming up shortly. My boy Eddie Jackson out of Chicago should be owned. He should not be on the waiver wire anywhere at all. Nowhere. He is playing at an elite level. He's putting up double-digit fantasy points each and every week. He is a must. Not even a must-have, but he is a must-start. If you have him, he's got to be in your lineups. I mean, there have been some defensive backs out there that have really, really performed this year. Marcus Williams and gosh, Jalen Petrie and Jonathan Owens and some of these guys you could grab off the waiver wire. Javon Holland. Who else, Tommy? Marcus Williams.
Hufanga.
Yeah, Tafanga. I mean, a lot of these guys, my problem is I've picked up all those guys and they're all balling out, and I've got like 4 or 5 of them, and I have no idea which one to start. And Mike Edwards. I mean, Mike Edwards is a huge, huge grab right now. Talk about him in a second, but right now, Eddie Jackson. I mean, he had 9 tackles, 6 of them solo. He had an interception and a pass defended. He is playing at an elite level, and he has to be owned. If he is on a waiver wire somewhere, that's nuts. That is absolutely nuts.
Well, he's a ball magnet too.
He really, really is. I mean, I've got him in my, he was my number 1 ad as far as defensive backs this week on my waiver wire. He's got 3 interceptions over the last 3 games. He's posted at least 8 tackles over the last 3 games. He is playing at just an elite level right now and averaging 12 fantasy points per game. There's no reason why he should be on a waiver wire anywhere. Pick him up and trade him. I don't care. Do something with him, but he should not be on the wire.
That's right.
What else, Tommy? Who else stood out to you? I know I did bring up Mike Edwards. I'll go ahead and get into that. I mean, 13 tackles, 5 of them solo. He had a sack and a tackle for loss in that Sunday game against the Kansas City Chiefs. He had 16 fantasy points. Another guy, just like Eddie Jackson, that's averaging 12 points per game. He is an elite IDP option right now, and he should not only be picked up, but he should be in your lineups every week if you can. If you can find a way to get him in there, I'm flexing him. I'm doing whatever I can to get him in. He needs to be in those lineups. So,
well, another guy like that's Hufanga. I just mentioned him a minute ago. He's another guy who does it every week. He's extremely consistent. This past weekend, 4 tackles, 3 solo, a pass defended, and a pick 6. He's tearing it up from that safety position, man.
Yeah, he's turning in to be a star. I mean, it's another guy that we recommended picking up weeks ago. Hopefully you did. I can't see him being available on any waiver wires right now. It'd be kind of wild if he was. Jordan Poyer, unfortunately missing the this weekend's game, but maybe someone drops him because when he's in the game, he's playing at a pretty high level as well. So if someone maybe he's missing and someone drops him to go pick up like an Eddie Jackson or a Mike Edwards or Honey Badger or something like that, keep that in mind. He'd be a great kind of pick up and stash.
Well, and also with Micah Hyde out for the rest of the season, he's going to have to take more upon his shoulders too when he comes back.
Absolutely. Some of the regular guys balled out. Mika Fitzpatrick balled out. Von Bell had a great game. Like we mentioned, Jordan Poyer and Hufanga. All these guys did very, very well. LaMarcus Joyner had a good game for the Jets. 6 tackles, 1 of them solo. He had 4 passes defended and 2 picks. Good for 17.5 fantasy points. Great game for him.
I think one of those picks was on the final play of the game when there was a kind of a Hail Mary type
garbage pick. garbage pick. I don't care. I'll take him any way I can get him, man.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's that's kind of a very rare occurrence there.
Yeah, it's true. So let's talk about some of our duds now. There was a few of them. Who's somebody that stood out to you, Tommy?
Trey Hendrickson. He's a guy you're starting every week if you have him, but he didn't do anything. Put up a 0.
He did put up a big goose egg, man.
DeForest Buckner was another one who put up 0 last weekend. He had a great game last night, but that didn't help you last weekend.
No, sure didn't. Trey Hendrickson, I don't know what to expect from him playing against the Baltimore Ravens Sunday night. Obviously, with Lamar being as mobile as he is, there's just no telling.
That seems like more of a Logan Wilson type of game.
Very much so. Very much so. I see Baltimore really trying to run the ball a lot. I think, with Justice Hill missing, I think that J.K. Dobbins is going to touch the ball a little bit more. I mean, he had 17 touches last week.
Gus will be back, though, won't he?
I don't think Gus is going to play. Gus looks great, looking good in practice. But Baltimore's being very, very conservative. They were the same way with J.K. the first couple of weeks of the season. I think they're going to be very, very conservative with Gus. You're going to see Mike Davis, and you're probably going to see Kenyon Drake suit up as well. So
that's gross.
Yeah. I mean, let's not chance things right now with Gus. Get him another week of practice and then roll him out there maybe next weekend. So a guy that just blew up last year, man, that it was kind of a league winner for me off the waiver wire was Robert Quinn. But I'll tell you what, he's not doing any of that this year.
Nothing.
He's not putting up any numbers. That whole Chicago team is just a dud. In fact, if Chicago knew what was good for him, they need to trade Robert Quinn, and they need to trade him to a contender.
They need to trade a lot of people.
They really, really do. But Robert Quinn's not getting any younger. I mean, he had 1 tackle or a half of a tackle or something the other day, or this last game. So, I mean, he's just not someone you can plug in your lineups right now. And I would try to trade him and just kind of base it off, sell him, on potential because of what he did last year. But he's a guy that maybe if he does get moved to a contender, that he will put up some better numbers. But right now, he's just no way you can put him in a lineup. Not at all. And another guy like that as well as Yannick Ngakoue. Yannick Ngakoue, like 3 years ago, he was okay.
I mean, is that like the most overhyped defensive player there is Yannick Ngakoue?
No. It's close, but I think Jadeveon Clowney.
Jadeveon Clowney's Clowney. Him and Clowney are the exact same dude.
Mm-hmm. I think Clowney is the most overrated defensive player, like in a long, long time. But yeah, Yannick Ngakoue is just no, he droppable. He shouldn't even be owned. Shouldn't. I mean, I don't care if you're in a.
Then he had a decent game last night, so.
Huh?
But then he had a pretty decent game last night.
What did he do last night?
I think he had a sack and a half last night, if I'm not mistaken.
Who cares? There's his sack and a half for the season.
Yeah, because that's what he'll do. He'll put up one pretty big game, and everybody will drool all over it. And he won't do anything else. He's
Chandler Jones.
Well, Chandler Jones actually used to be good.
I know. Ngakoue really kind of. Ngakoue's been just one of those guys that's just been all potential. Mm-hmm. Like, the measurables are there. It's just he's not.
The production's not.
It never really has been. No, not at all. Like I said, there's no reason for him to be in any lineups at all. I mean, you're losing if he's in your lineup. So let's see. Let's move on to, I don't know. Shaq Leonard last week didn't do much, but he left the game. He was hurt. Another guy that, man, he's just such a stud, but he just cannot stay on the field, Tommy. It's driving me crazy.
Yeah.
But what can you do with him? You can't really trade him. You're not getting much for him.
Well, sell his name.
That's all you can do.
Sell his name, sell his potential. Say once he's healthy, he'll come back and he'll be dominant. Sell that and then hope somebody buys it.
Yeah. What's some defensive backs that really kind of?
Xavier Howard, he really hadn't done anything this year. He had a big year a couple years ago where he had all those interceptions and really hadn't been the same since. 2 tackles, 1 solo, point and a half. That's just not going to get it done in your lineup. J.C. Jackson's another one. Had all those picks last year. I know he's been hurt to start the season this year, but he's borderline droppable.
Yeah. He was great. Him and Trayvon Diggs actually just balled out for me last year in a couple of leagues. And
Diggs is still getting picks though.
No, Diggs is doing well. Diggs is doing well. I'm just saying last year they did very, very well for me. But J.C. Jackson, he might put it all together at some point this season. But right now, I mean,
Sure.
I don't even know if he's rosterable at
Right.
the moment,
And
unless you're in a league that rewards you big time for passes defended or
right.
interceptions. And I think he's gonna get there. But is he gonna put up the same numbers he did last year? Highly unlikely.
Right. Yeah.
So
that's exactly right. Jeremy Chin did nothing. Most of the time with Jeremy Chin, you're expecting him to be a top 5 safety.
Mm-hmm.
He got you goose egg last weekend. And
that
kills your lineup whenever you have a starter who gives you 0 points.
Yep. Let's see here. Yeah. Jeremy Chin's been a guy. He such potential there over the last couple of seasons. People have been really, really high on him. I was one of those guys, but just hasn't really done a whole lot this season. So yeah. Someone just messaged me and said, "Hey, I want to see the shirt." So yeah, I've got the
Go buy it.
Yep, the IDP kind of NWO style. If you like it, go check it out. You can go over to dynastyprosfootball.com, go to our merch over to the right. You click on it and you can find it there. If you have any issues, you can just message me on Twitter.
Yep, go buy it.
All right. Yep.
Buy a bunch of
them. Yeah, buy a bunch now. Just get you one. Yeah, go get you some. All right, let's move on to some of our ads and some of our buys right now. Tommy, who's someone you're trying to see, someone you're trying to add or someone you're trying to buy? I was going to choose one or the other, but hell, it doesn't matter.
Well,
who's some guys you're looking at?
Obviously, Frankie Louvu. He should be owned. There's no excuse for him not to be owned. If he's unowned in your league, smarten up and go pick him up.
I couldn't imagine him being on a waiver wire.
I couldn't either.
With the exception of me and you are in that one salary cap dynasty league,
right,
man, and someone cut him loose last week.
Right, exactly. Smarten up, people. Don't drop studs.
Yeah,
I don't care if it's only been 4 games. At this point, it's a sample size. He's going to do it. He's going to continue to do it.
Yeah, I can't believe I picked him up after week 4. I mean, I picked him up on the waiver wire this week. Someone had dropped him, which blew my mind.
Yeah, if I had noticed that he'd been dropped, I'd have been scooping him up too.
Oh, I know. I told you. I said I didn't want you to. I didn't say anything to you. I didn't want you to know. But yeah. I mean, I picked him up, signed him to like the longest contract I could do. I mean, so I picked him up for like almost the league minimum. I don't think people in the league realized that he was dropped. I just happened to catch it, so
I didn't realize he was dropped. If I'd been first in line to grab him.
Yeah, and then I go and I grab him. I put in some fab on him, and come to I put a little bit more than the minimum because I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to fight some people for him, and then come to find out, not a single other person put a claim on him or put a bid on him. I don't think anyone knew, and even the guy that dropped him, I can't believe he didn't put a claim on him. So wow, just blows my mind.
TJ Edwards is another one. He at this point in the season, he should not be unowned. The Eagles drafted Nakobe Dean in the draft, and he's not doing anything. It's TJ Edwards who's doing it all.
Mm-hmm.
He's been fantastic for the Eagles. He's a guy I'd be either be looking to pick up or be looking to trade for. He's young. He's really good, and he's one of the leaders of that defense.
So you're saying go snatch him up if possible.
TJ Edwards, absolutely.
Yep. What about Drew Tranquil?
Love that guy, man. Love him. He has a little bit of position flexibility. He's good in coverage because in college he was a safety and then moved down to linebacker. So he has the potential to pick up some picks there, but he's also a really good tackler, and he's racking up the tackles there for the Chargers.
Very much so. Very much so. I mentioned Josie Jewell earlier. He was a hot waiver wire ad a week ago. If he happens to be on your waiver wire, he is absolutely worth a pickup. He is
Monitor his injury situation though too.
Well, he finished the game. He played. He just came out for a little while, but he is he's an elite linebacker option when he's playing right now. So, someone to grab, and if you've got him, you throw him in your starting lineup as well. What about Jaquan Brisker out of Chicago, Tommy?
Well, another linebacker I was wanting to mention first.
Go for
it. He just signed the other day with the Raiders. Blake Martinez.
Absolutely. Yep.
Blake Martinez is just a tackle monster.
He's
always going to be around.
And he's going to play Sunday. They've already elevated him to the active roster.
He's going to play. So he's a guy that I would definitely try to pick up early. Don't miss the boat on him.
Another guy, I mentioned him in my waiver wire article last week, and I put him back in there this week. A guy that I'm trying to get out in front of is Deion Jones of the Atlanta Falcons.
Sure.
He is eligible to return this week. Not sure what the future holds for him. Atlanta was trying to move him this offseason, but his contract was a little bit of a pain for other teams, so they couldn't find a suitor. However, they did rework his deal, which is going to make him a lot more appealing to other teams. So, there might be some teams that need help at middle linebacker that can tackle, and kind of bring up the Baltimore Ravens as one of those. I mean, they were in that Blake Martinez hunt there. They were trying to sign Bobby Wagner this offseason, and they need some. Patrick Queen right now is not. I mean, he's underachieving. He's out there a lot, but he's missing a lot of tackles.
He's undersized for a middle linebacker.
Yeah, I mean, he's got the speed, but he's taking the wrong angles. He
seems like, to me, he's more of a weak side guy. He's not a middle linebacker to me.
Agreed. And so I think that's the reason why Baltimore was looking at. I mean, they brought in Blake Martinez. I don't know if physically they saw something there because they didn't sign him, or if it was the fact that they signed Jason Pierre-Paul and they had to give him a little extra money. Maybe that had something to do with it, but they really, really do need help at middle linebacker. So Deion Jones, regardless, even if he plays for Atlanta, we know he's an absolute elite linebacker option in IDP. So he is certainly someone that could be forgotten. Go grab him up now if you're able to. If you have the roster space, go grab him because I think he's going to produce immediately once he gets out there.
Let me ask you something about the Ravens.
Yeah.
Is Malik Harrison anything?
No. He hits hard. He's got some good speed, good on paper, but that's it. I mean, he's depth, but no potential to be a starter at all. They drafted Patrick Queen and him in that same draft. So they've not gotten the linebacker production that they need there in Baltimore. They need someone that can tackle. And like I said, Patrick Queen is just he's been frustrating a lot of Ravens fans lately. I mean, he's missed out on some plays and missed some tackles. It's really, really hurt us in some of these games. So, it's just Malik Harrison's not going to be an option. They need an established middle linebacker, someone that can do that. Your Deion Jones, Blake Martinez would have been a good fit there. Not sure as far as the money goes, what they. Why that didn't work out. I was almost positive he was going to end up in Baltimore. I know we talked about it a few weeks ago of that being a good place for him. So we shall see. We'll see what happens to him.
Well, the reason why I asked is I've just seen his name pop up here and there. And I mean, with like you were talking about with the struggles of Patrick Queen, if Harrison could have been a potential solution.
No, he's gotten his opportunities, but just not done it. Baltimore's brought in some guys some older veterans that they brought in to kind of see if they could kind of plug that hole, which we've kind of lost due to injury. Right now, Baltimore's really been focusing on getting pressure on the quarterback, and that's been a big issue for them. hopefully that changes Sunday night against the Bengals, who have been known to give up a lot of sacks. So,
but at some point in that division, they're going to need a run stuffer. With
absolutely.
Mixon and Najee Harris and Chubb, they're going to need somebody who can stop the run, and without that, they're going to be in trouble.
I agree. I absolutely agree with you there. Let's see here. We were talking about some of our ads and some of our buys. I want to kind of go over a couple of, I was looking at the waiver wire article from this week, and I'm looking at some of these guys. I'm looking at my linebacker options, my top 6 guys: Malcolm Rodriguez, Rashawn Evans for the Falcons, Deion Jones of the Falcons, Tay Crowder was someone I recommended picking up, Leighton Vander Esch, and his ex-teammate Jalen Smith of the Giants actually got elevated to the active roster last week and put up some pretty good tackle numbers there. Was pretty good there. But last week, kind of wanted to talk about some of the guys I did recommend picking up last week. Frankie Louvu was one of those guys. I said, go grab him. If he's at all available, grab him. I said, had 23.5 fantasy points. Malcolm Rodriguez was a guy I said pick up early too, and he ended up with 14.5 fantasy points. Zaire Franklin heading into week 4 had 11.5 fantasy points. Drew Tranquil had 8.5 fantasy points. So some of those
problem is now is you probably missed the boat on a lot of these guys. If you didn't grab them a couple weeks ago when we were talking about them, it's probably a little too late now.
Yeah, I've been doing that in the article where I've been kind of not only am I posting the guys to go pick up now, I'm actually posting right at the bottom there the guys that I recommended the week before, and I'm putting their fantasy points, that week's fantasy points behind, beside their name to kind of give you an idea of what they how they produced after I recommended picking them up. So, pretty cool stuff there. Who's some other guys? I said Josie Jewell's an elite option when he's out there. I kind of mentioned Brisker, and we were talking about Baltimore and Dafe Owe.
Owe has so much potential, man.
He does. And, we're not giving up on him. I mean, he's still got plenty of room to grow.
He's only a kind of guy, so I mean,
yeah, we're just hoping for a little bit more out of him a little sooner, though. Definitely someone to keep on your radar, though, but not a must start. Who's some other guys to you, Tommy, it sticks out?
A guy who should not be on your waiver wire, but if you have the opportunity to go and trade for him, Gregory Rousseau, defensive end for Buffalo. He keeps getting better and better, man. There's a reason why he had a first round grade when he was in the draft, and he's really showing it now.
Yeah, we'd mentioned him a few weeks ago to go grab him, but I'm still seeing him available in some leagues out there. Not a lot, but you might be in one of those. Luckily, if you're in one of those leagues, snatch him up.
Yep.
Alex Highsmith is another guy. Depending on where he's eligible, I don't think it matters at all if he's defensive line eligible, but he's a must add. If he's eligible at linebacker only, like on myfantasyleague.com, it does not matter. He is turning into a weekly must start right now. So go snatch him up. Quinnen Williams.
Playing well.
Yeah, he is. He really, really is. Another guy that I was looking at as far as the defensive line in my waiver wire article. He is one of the guys I did mention. Sebastian Joseph Day was another guy. Another one I would maybe try to jump out in front of a little bit is Jason Pierre-Paul of the Ravens. Should be probably available in most leagues, depending on how deep your benches are. He could be worth a stash. Played an awful lot last week for the Ravens.
And wasn't expected to, was he?
No, it just kind of happened that way. I mean, he did very, very well. He didn't put up a whole lot of stats. I mean, it wasn't anything like that, but he is only going to get better, and he looked good, and he looked explosive, and he's just a veteran that knows where to be and what to do. So I could see him being a fairly productive defensive lineman, because I think in most of these leagues, he's defensive line eligible. So I could see him being pretty productive, come kind of halfway point of the season, give him a couple of more weeks to really get acclimated there. And I could see him putting up some pretty decent numbers, especially for a defensive lineman, a great grab, especially in those bye weeks. So
opportunity is king too. So if he's getting the snaps and he has the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Someone else that sticks out to you, man. I mean, we just mentioned Quentin Williams, doing very, very well. Who's someone else that you like?
Jacob Phillips has really turned it on lately.
We were asked about him
last week. He wasn't really on my radar a whole lot. But when you go back and look at it, he has put up a couple really solid past couple weeks.
I think they had an injury that really got him into the game, kind of so people could plug him in.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's given him the opportunity. So he is definitely on the radar now.
Well, opportunity is king, like I just said, and he's taking advantage of it.
Absolutely. What about that corner out of Tennessee, Roger McCreary?
Roger McCreary. I'm kind of leery of corners just because they don't really
leery of McCreary.
They don't really put up a whole lot of points as far as tackles. So you're really kind of banking on interceptions or the fact that that team's front seven isn't very good for them to rack up tackles. But kind of keep an eye on them.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's turnover. When you got a corner, you're really looking for that turnover. But if you use our scoring system over at Dynasty Pros Football, we do reward you a point per pass defended. So that certainly helps with him. L'Jarius Sneed right now is the number one scoring corner in our setup, and by a pretty decent amount because Nate Hobbs has done well. Tariq Woolen from Seattle has played very, very well. Jalen Ramsey is Jalen Ramsey. Jalen Watson out of Kansas City has been a little bit of a surprise. Not really a weekly start, but another guy at corner or DB that is almost turning into a weekly start that can help you out. If you missed out on a lot of these safeties, is someone like Marlon Humphrey, kind of a turnover machine. Teams kind of like Trayvon Diggs, teams are not scared of him, so they target him quite a bit. They think that players can get past. They think that they can burn Marlon Humphrey, and some of them are getting away. But what's happening is it's giving him opportunities to make tackles. He's a turnover machine, always punching the ball loose, all of that. He's getting work. And so he is a very, very sneaky, nice little IDP play out there, especially if you need help.
He's become the master of the peanut punch, hasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe they need to rename it. I mean, the peanut punch is the peanut punch. I don't know. They got to come up with something different because I think the peanut punch is right here, and Marlon Humphrey's just turned it up about 5 notches. He's just kind of a special player that is in the right place at the right time a lot. And as long as he stays healthy, he's just constantly produces because teams are targeting him. They think they can beat him for some reason. And, he gets caught here and there. I mean, but all corners do. So, all right, Tommy, man, good show. I think it might've been one of our quickest shows ever.
We're under an hour.
We are under an hour. I don't even know what to do with that. Maybe we should just start singing or something just to take up some time. I mean, usually we run these things about an hour to an hour and 15.
Got a pretty nice Saturday schedule. Going to go to a Bed Bath Beyond. I don't know, Home Depot. I don't know if we're going to have enough time.
Don't know. Frank the Tank. Gotta love it there. So anyways, we want to thank everybody for watching the show. Be sure to check us out next week. We're going to have some really, really cool guests lined up over the next few weeks on the IDP show here. So, and be sure to bring any of those questions, hit us up on Twitter, anything like that. We're always available out there to answer any questions. And like I said, be sure to go check out dynastyprosfootball.com and idpguys.org for all of your latest IDP content, rankings, trade values, and all that good stuff out there. We even have IDP Dynasty rankings over at Dynasty Pros as well. So for myself, for Tommy over here, we want to thank you again for watching the show, and we'll catch you next week. See ya.
Cheers.